Well, I'm back. I'm sorry I got a little bit delayed. We are now into chapter 15, distributing products. Very interesting because I think we're going to find out some things we didn't always know about how products got distributed and why we have the type of businesses we have that distribute certain products. So our own goals for this chapter explain the concept of marketing channels and their value. Uh, Demonstrate how intermediaries perform the 6 marketing utilities, identify the types of wholesale intermediaries in the distribution system. I'm having some trouble with the video. Don't understand that. See if we can't fix this up here. Uh, Not sure what's going on here. We're having some issues. I can talk, but some reason we're not. No, that's not what I want to do. Can't seem to. I can't seem to get this moving here for some reason. I'm not sure what it is. Let's try this again. Well, I don't understand what's going on here. Well, we've gotten back here, but we're still stuck in that mode. Well, I'm going to go on here. Hopefully, we'll be able to do the rest of this. Compare the distribution strategies retailers use. Uh, Kind of a bad picture up there, I think. Not sure what is happening. Well, for some reason we're stuck, and I'm not sure what reason it is. Well, I'm just really confused here. Well, I'm going to continue. I'm sorry, I don't know what's happened with the video. Hopefully this is picking up, and we're not going to worry too much about the rest of us. Explain the various ways to build cooperation and channel systems, and then describe logistics, and outline how intermediaries manage the transportation and storage of goods. What are marketing intermediaries? Well, we've got this back, but I don't know. Marketing intermediaries are people that take possession of goods and then move them to various locations so consumers can buy them. Notice they said they insist on moving, etc. They are called intermediaries because they're in the middle of the process. Channel distribution, this is a group of marketing intermediaries joining together to transport goods and services, goods mostly, from the producer to the consumer. Now, this is the distribution for sustainability, which I'm not going to talk about a whole lot. Gee, I wish I could get this thing fixed. This is not going to work. Now, these are different types of intermediaries, and then we're going to go to a very interesting slide, which you're going to be able to see, and also in your textbook. Agents and brokers, these are people who bring a buyer and seller together. They help the selling process, but they do not take possession of the goods. Uses the word. A wholesaler is an intermediary who does take possession of the goods or title to the goods, and then they sell to other people. Can be hospitals, institutions, manufacturers, etc. And they also sell to retailers. And the retailer is a person or is an organization that takes title to the goods and sells them to the end user, or more appropriately as the consumer. Now, the next two slides, I'm not going to talk too much about this slide because it's really not too easy to see. Oh, I can blow it up a little bit better. You can see these two slides, 15.1 and 15.2, these two figures, excuse me, on page 408 and 409. And this shows selected channels of distribution for consumer goods. And if you look at this, I'm going to bring this down so we can get all on one slide here. The manufacturer, if the manufacturer was going to sell to a particular person or persons, look at the number of people they would have to do. So it would be the manufacturer, and he or she would go to a retailer, etc. That's direct. Sometimes you find that for cars and things of that nature. Then consumer goods, for the most part, you're going to go manufacturer, wholesaler, retailer to people, and then sometimes you're going to have some other things in there. But one of the reasons that they do this is because if the manufacturer, if you look at this system on on figure 15.1, what would have to be done? But then if you look at figure 15.2, it changes the whole dynamic. So intermediaries, we have these because they can perform tasks easier and quicker than the manufacturer can, and usually for less cost, because the manufacturer would have to do a lot of things that they're really not set up to do. So notice that they make the market more efficient by reducing the number of transactions and contacts. In other words, if the manufacturer wanted to do everything the retailer did, he or she would have to have a lot more people working for them. So here is how we're going to create here's how we're going to create the efficiency exchange. Notice if the manufacturer took care of everything, look at the slide or the figure on page 409, all these different things the manufacturer would have to do, and all these different interactions that he or she would have to have. As opposed to doing business with the wholesaler, and then it's the wholesaler who does the interactions with all these other folks. The marketing intermediary we'll try it that way, see if that'll make it work. Now we're back to the same part. We can get rid of the marketing intermediary, but the services that he or she provides can't be. And then they perform functions, notice we talk about quicker and less expensively than the manufacturer can. Yes, they do add costs, but they tend to be offset by the value offered by the intermediary. Most often we call them a wholesaler. Now this particular slide talks about the distribution effect on your food dollar. Notice that labor, 34 cents goes to labor, 25 cents goes to farmer, on up, etc. And the seller, most likely the supermarket, gets about 3.5 cents profit of that entire dollar. But notice the distribution costs in here are about 75%. Intermediaries create utility. And there are, as according to this particular slide, there are 6 types of form utility they do: form, time, place, possession, information, and service. Form utility, notice here it changes the raw material into a useful product. Starbucks, Dell. Time utility, we're getting the product at the right place at the right time when customers want it. Place utility, kind of going on with that. With time, I've put place in with time. Possession, and we're transferring ownership from one party to another. And then we can see that really improves what we're doing. Information utility, just here talks about flow of information between marketing participants. And then service utility, this is giving service before, during, and after the sale. Wholesale intermediaries. They make business-to-business sales. That's the wholesaler. And then notice, however, that stores like Staples and Costco also have retail operations. Retail sales are goods and services to customers for their own use. As I've mentioned before, the term end user is probably best to say here. And this will help us understand that the end user is the person who's going to use the product. He or she's not trying to move it on to someone else. Wholesaler, they will do this usually to businesses, and businesses will then do something different with that product. And what happens here is that most of us don't know wholesalers because we don't buy from wholesalers. Yes, some people do, but the vast majority of us don't. We do business with a retailer. Now we have different kinds of wholesalers that we're going to talk about. A merchant wholesaler is a company, a business that takes title, possession, as I like to use it, to the product and stores it in his or her facility. Full service, they do everything, including distribution. Limited function wholesalers only do limited distribution functions. Now let's do a little look at some of these things. A rack jobber, this person furnishes racks and shelves, and then what he or she stocks on those racks or shelves is sold on consignment. Cash and carry wholesalers, they will serve mostly small retailers, and it's exactly what it says. You pay cash for what you carry out. A drop shipper, on the other hand, does take orders from retailers and from other wholesalers, and then he or she ships the product right there. Notice, as I said, he or she, it's actually they have the product shipped. Remember, these are limited people. Agents and brokers. They perform very similar functions, but they're kind of different in what they do. And that is, the agent tends to have a long-term relationship with his or her clients. I think perhaps the best way to think of agent is someone who represents an athlete or a movie star or someone of that nature. Now, there are different types of agents. I use those agents so you can get it in your mind what these folks do to help negotiate contracts. They bring the buyer and the seller together, and they help cement the relationship between these two people. In this case, we're talking about they're not taking title to anything. Remember that. A manufacturer's representative will represent perhaps one or represent one or perhaps more manufacturers in a specific geographic area. And a sales agent represents a single client in a much larger territory. A broker, on the other hand, tends to represent clients on a temporary basis. Retailing in the U.S., I think this is an interesting slide. Approximately 2.3 million retailers in the United States. Notice it says not including websites, and it doesn't include all their outlets. We're talking about 2.3 million retailers, and they employ over 11 million people. We do have things like pop-up stores. These are stores that are open. Notice they say temporary outlets. They're run for a short period of time, and they offer items, and it's a promotional type thing. Notice they also have things you don't find in traditional stores. This is just the fastest growing retail categories, which I'm not going to spend any time on. This talks about how to prevent coupon fraud. Have your coupons be unique, expiration dates are clear, and then train your staff how to notice bogus coupons. Require receipts, shred receipts, check for tampering, have customers fill out a return form. Different types of retail stores. I'm not going to go over this a whole lot. The difference between department, discount, supermarket, warehouse, club, etc. Retail distribution strategies are three: intensive, selective, exclusive. Intensive is getting your product into as many stores as possible. So it's wide dissemination of your product, getting it out for everybody to be able to see. Selective says that you are going to have a few stores in a certain area. Maybe you'll have 2 or 3. Those stores will sell similar type product and attract a similar type client. And then exclusive, one distribution outlet or one outlet in a geographic area. Now, farms and non-store retailing, electronic retailing, we know what that is. That's the internet. Telemarketing, selling goods and services over the telephone. You can have vending machines that dispense mostly convenience goods. Important features on e-commerce websites: good return policies, established brands, user reviews. That's very important to get a user review up there, especially ones that are positive. Obviously, some of the other ones are going to get there, so you have to make sure that you are doing good service. We have some forms of non-store retailing, direct selling, exactly what it says. That's direct person to person. We do this often in homes or things of that nature. Tupperware would come to mind. Avon Products is another. Direct marketing is linking either the manufacturer or the intermediary directly with the customer. At 4 systems of channel distribution: corporate, contractual, administered, and supply chains. Now let's look at those a little bit. Corporate, this is where the corporation owns the outlet and doesn't go through an intermediary. So product comes from the manufacturer directly to a manufacturer-owned outlet, and the examples given here are Goodyear and Sherwin-Williams Paint. Contractor Members are bound to cooperate through contractual agreements. Think of this as franchises, franchise system. And then you do have a wholesale sponsored system like IGA and Ace Hardware. And then retail cooperatives such as True Value and Associated Grocers. Administered, this exists when the producer manages all aspects of marketing. Examples here are Kraft and Ralph Lauren. Now, this is different than the company-owned stores that we mentioned, like Goodyear and Sherwin-Williams Paint. This is where the producer manages all the marketing aspects. Supply chain, this is just all the activities that organizations must perform to move goods and services from the source, usually we're thinking here raw materials, to the end user. And supply chain management is just making sure that all those pieces in that chain are linked together and work well. This shows you a supply chain here. If you will, notice the whole supply chain from suppliers to consumers. And then the channel of distribution would be from the manufacturer to the consumer. And of course, it goes through wholesalers and retailers. Now we have several types of logistics. We have inbound logistics, and we have that's bringing the raw materials in, and it's getting them to the producer, to the manufacturer. Materials handling, on the other hand, is movement of goods within the warehouse, and then from the warehouse to the factory floor, and then from the factory floor to workstations. So think of materials handling as an in-house operation, getting it to the various places it needs it. Or various places it's needed, better way to say that. Outbound logistics, exactly what it says. That's moving the finished product from the manufacturer to the eventual end user. And then reverse logistics is just bringing back return material, maybe for recycling or for what other type reason. These are different modes of transportation: rail, truck, pipeline, plane, and ship. Talks here about their cost, their efficiency, their frequency, their availability, how good they are, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something that has to be considered when you want to move goods and services to people, and how well they can operate. This is seen at the bottom of page 424, figure 15.7. Now here's some logistics specialists. You have a freight forwarder, putting many small shipments together to create a single large shipment, usually done by either train or ship. Intermodal shipping, multiple modes of transport. We think of containers, etc., and that's what this slide shows, a container ship down here at the bottom. Piggybacking, this is trucks, trailers being placed on trains. Fishy backing, trucks being placed on, and trailers being placed on ships. Bury backing, same things being placed on airplanes. Here's how products are gotten from one place to another. Truck is the most frequently used, 69%, followed by trains, pipelines, ships, and finally air. And finally, storage warehouses. It's going to keep product for a long period of time. That's exactly what storage means. And in distribution warehouses, they gather in product and hold it for a period of time and then ship it back out. Notice it uses the term redistribute. We have beer and soft drinks and then package deliveries. Now that brings us to the end of chapter 15. It is 6:58. Let's take a 5-minute break to 7:03. We'll come back and finish chapter 16 and be finished for this evening. I hope to get this back on here, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do a very good job of it. But I will try. Please come back at 6:03. How that got up there like that. Yeah, it's not going to work, is it? Okay, we're back. Sorry, the picture is still down. I guess it's not really that important to be able to see me anyway. Let's look at our learning goals for Chapter 16 using effective promotions. Identify the new and traditional tools that make up the promotion mix. Contrast the advantages and disadvantages of various advertising media, including the internet, social media. Illustrate the steps of the B2B and the B2C selling process, business to business, business to consumer. Describe the role of public relations department and show how publicity fits in that role. Assess the effectiveness of various forms of sales promotion, including sampling, and show how word of mouth, email marketing, viral marketing, blogging, podcasting, and mobile marketing work. This is the promotion mix. Advertising, personal selling, public relations, and sales promotion, all centered around the product or obviously a service. Integrated marketing, marketing is used, notice here, to create the image that you want. Obviously, it should be positive. Again, meeting the customer's needs, or as we've talked about before, exceeding customer satisfaction. And then meet the strategic marketing and promotional goals of the firm. Just notice here, this person can't afford to outsource the promotions. Just gets creative. Newspaper editor stories about our company. And this is some way of publicity. This is the promotional campaign. And we're going to talk about this in some respects. These are the steps. Remember, you have to identify your target market, define what your objectives are, have to have a budget so you know what you're trying to do, get a message that stays on message, implement your plan, and then evaluate the effectiveness. These are classic campaigns, been around for a long period of time. The Diamond is Forever goes. The De Beers has been around for a long time. 1939. 1984 Apple, the uncommercial, didn't explain the product. Interesting. Does she or doesn't she? Shocking. Clairol. Does she use coloring or doesn't she not? Advertising. Notice this is paid non-commercial, paid non-personal communication through various and sundry ways. Non-personal gets you to buy a product. Notice down here, its goals are to inform, remind, and to persuade. This is how much is spent yearly on advertising, $241 billion. Now remember that this data I'm giving you here is a little dated. Probably goes back to 2011, so we're probably spending more money than that now. Social advertising. Notice how many Twitter followers Starbucks has and McDonald's has on Facebook. These are the major categories of advertising: retail, trade, business to business, institutional, and product. And then what we're trying to do here. And the different, what I want to say, strategies here. Then we have things like advocacy, comparative, interactive, online, and mobile. These are advertising expenditures by media in millions of dollars. The direct mail is still the largest. Direct mail campaign, what you're trying to do here. The biggest thing to talk about here is if we're going to do a direct mail campaign is to make sure you have the right list and make sure it is reaching the right audience. Also talks about follow-up mailing. Now, these are slogans that ask you to match them. Everybody doesn't like something, but nobody doesn't like Sara Lee. We bring good things to life. That was one of the was DuPont or one of those companies. I can't remember. Somebody in that nature. Good to last drop, Maxwell House coffee. And those are things that stick with us. We may not buy that product, but we can remember those particular things. And then these are things where companies have used animals to associate with the product. Nipper, the dog listening at the end of what was known as a megaphone to his master's or her master's voice, and different ones that we have seen over a period of years. Notice that TV advertising is still dominant media. We do have some other things that are coming in there. And the big thing for advertising is to get your product on a program that people are going to watch. Probably becoming a little more difficult today with the fewer and fewer people watching what we notice commercial TV. It's going to be the big four broadcasting networks: NBC, ABC, CBS, and Fox. Also would like to have a product associated with maybe with the show. Now, that was done many years ago, and somebody would come at the end of the program that he or she was on and talk about a particular product that sponsored that. You don't see that too much anymore. Talks about going to the movies, memorable product placements of 2011. Infomercial, we know what that is. That is usually a half an hour or an hour program on commercial television, specifically designed to get you to buy a product. Interactive promotions are what they say. Notice it's a dialogue, even though there may be no speaking parts between the seller and the buyer. Infomercial Hall of Fame, which we won't go over at all. We've been around for a long time. I'm sure each of you has seen some of them. Online experience. This is something that talks about how to avoid losing customers over a bad website. And the first thing there is brand messaging is key. So you need to make sure that that's there. You have to have a site that's easy to navigate. I like to say user-friendly. Too often it's not. Sometimes sites are built for technological people, not for the rest of us. Social media components of other promotion. Again, something I'm not going to go through, but it is something we cannot discount, and people who are in the nonprofit business have to think about that. Be careful about scammers. The biggest thing to tell you is don't give away unnecessary information. Somebody asks for your Social Security number, your credit card number, you don't want to do business with them. You don't ever want to do business with somebody asks for your Social Security number. People will say they're government agents or whatever, and that just does not happen. monitoring ad effectiveness, something you really need to do, and make sure you're doing that. Look for evaluations, etc., especially if you're using social media. You have to know if it's reaching the audience you want it to reach and get some kind of feedback. Here's something that's notice here. This socially superior lessons from the Old Spice man. And you have to have something. It says strong persona, but you have to have something that people can associate with, they can relate to. And if they can't relate to it, they probably aren't going to buy the product. And something you need to consider. There's the relationship. It goes back to the relationship building that we talked about earlier tonight. Global advertising is something that is difficult to do because one size does not fit all. And notice that it says a single product and promotional strategy. A little difficult because it's not easy to do when you're talking about different countries, different areas of geography, different ethnic groups, etc., etc. It is really difficult. And notice the last thing. Translations cause problems. We think of translation and words don't easily translate across other languages word for word. So it's very, very difficult. This is just talking about promotion in rural India. 700 million rural consumers spending more than ever, but you have to be careful here because many of these people are not well educated, and therefore the message may be distorted. Personal selling is pretty much what it says. That's face-to-face, and it is expensive. It may be the most effective. And here you notice that the salesperson is searching out new prospects. And the last part of that top bullet there is follow-up. Very, very important when you're doing personal selling. So the salesperson has to create a very good relationship, has to be listening, has to be empathetic, has to be a number of things to be able to get through. These are the steps in the personal selling process, and they really are pretty self-evident. The first and most important thing is you have to find a person who has the wherewithal to buy your product. And that's what this talks about, finding a prospect and qualifying that prospect. This means that the prospect has the wherewithal, has the resources to purchase what you're trying to sell. So you have some kind of a pre-approach, and then you approach the person, you make the presentation, you answer objections. Sometimes they're questions, sometimes they're questions with objections, etc. And then you close the sale. Now, sometimes they talk about having a trial close, that it kind of object there is to move the prospect into a buying mode, if you will. And so he or she is more comfortable in doing that. You might say something like, what'd be the best time for you to make this sale or train your sales staff on this new product, etc. So what you're doing here is, and by the way, that comes from the text. What you're doing here is you're telling the prospective purchaser, or you're putting the prospective purchaser in the position where he or she's already made a decision to buy the product. And you said, when can I come back and train your staff to use this product? So you've gone a little bit beyond this close the sale and put the person into a position where he or she is kind of affirming that they like the product. Then you obviously you have to follow up. Now, this is not the part of coming back to train the staff. This is the part of going back and finding out how the product's working. What is it we can do to do this or do that or do something else to make things the way you want to make them. This is going back and giving you a recapitulation of what I kind of just said about going through this thing, the steps in the selling process, this prospect and qualifying. And one of the things that it mentions here, besides being able to buy the product, is qualifying, is making sure that the prospect needs this product. So for whatever particular reason. And then the last part of this thing also says the authority to buy. So in this particular case, when we're talking about authority to buy, it's a little bit different than trying to sell directly to somebody as opposed to selling to a business. And so if you're talking to somebody in a business, you want them to buy something, you want to make sure that he or she does have the authority to purchase. Whereas if you're talking to a normal, pardon me, a normal everyday consumer, you pretty much know that that person has the wherewithal to buy, and obviously the authority. Now this talks about some successful selling strategies. If whoever you're selling to, you have to know that person. This talks about knowing the customer's business. Well, that's all well and good, but you also, if you're not in the business part, selling to the consumer, you have to know the consumer in some respect. You should only talk to people who are trying to sell to people, but there's a conversation that you're having. Remember, a sales is when you're trying to sell something, you're having a conversation with somebody. Yeah, and you're trying to convince them, but yes, you're having a conversation. So anyway, what the deal here is that if it's a business, you have to understand the business, what this product's going to do for this person, and how it's going to help his or her business. Build relationships. It's something we've talked about right along here since we started back in chapter 13, and it's important. And then obviously, the person you're trying to sell to has to be a person who can purchase. If he or she can't, you're wasting your time now. If he or she can influence the purchase, yeah, you need to talk to him, but then you're obviously going to need to get down the hall or around the corner to the person who can make that final decision. Sales slips up. You really, there's a lot of things on this particular slide that come to mind, and you can say, but I think the thing that comes to my mind, and you won't see it here, it's in the words I'm going to say, is but staying focused. If the customer throws up an objection that you can see is something that's not going to help you, and you just said, I don't have the cash flow to do this, et cetera, et cetera. You got to kind of back off of this thing. And I think you just have to, again here, staying focused, being yourself, trying to create a relationship, things of that nature. Those are all very important things that you really have to stop and think about what you're doing. These are the steps in the B2B business, and we'll start down here at the bottom. Again, you have to approach the person. You have to know that this person is qualified and able to do the purchase, etc. You're going to ask questions. That's kind of like entering a relationship or maybe continuing a relationship and getting whatever thing there. Obviously, make the presentation, close the sale, and then follow up. Again, this is the same thing about you have to know what you sold. You have to know how it's going to help your customer, and then you have to go back to the customer and make sure that the product is doing what you promised it would do. That if you have to fix something, you're going to be able to do that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all these things are important. A little bit different than the selling to the consumer or the end user, as I like to say. Pretty much follows along though, but quite similar. Public relations. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to keep the finger on the pulse of the public. We're trying to influence the public, maybe to change policies, maybe to, in response to something the public wants, doing something, et cetera, et cetera. So a PR program listens to what the public wants, tries to do something to change policies and perhaps procedures, maybe laws, et cetera, which obviously takes a little longer time. And then let the people know that you're trying to influence, that you understand their issues, and that you're going to be responsive to what they're asking for. That's public relations. Publicity, on the other hand, is something that is given by a third party about a product, service, or person. It is something that is delivered to the media. It's not paid for, and it's not controlled by the person or persons or organization that send the information. Now, what are the advantages of this? Well, first of all, this type of publicity is free. It's going to reach an audience who may not see an advertisement. And notice this, because it's usually delivered via TV or radio or newspapers, or perhaps even periodicals, meaning magazines, it's more believable than paid advertising. Now, that's great, but there's some disadvantages over it. You don't have any idea when this publicity is going to appear, time, volume, or anything else. And it may be good for you, may be bad for you because of timing. And then it's a one-time shot. It's not going to be repeated. Sales promotions. This is something that an organization uses to stimulate the public to buy a product. We have business-to-business promotions and then consumer sales promotions. Here are ways for consumer promotions, coupons, demonstrations, in-store displays, etc. These are different coupons. I'm not going to go through that. Word of mouth promotion, probably the best promotion that any organization can get because it tends to be, for the most part, positive. Now, when it's not positive, it can be a real killer. People, I'll never do this again. I'll never do that again. I wouldn't darken their door, et cetera, et cetera. Those are things that are very difficult. But restaurants rely on this. Of course, today we see a lot of critiques of restaurants online, and quite often now, of course, that's word of mouth. It's just not direct person to person, but it is word of mouth. So there's some other ones that rely on this type of advertising. Viral marketing. Notice it's paying customers to say positive things. And I really have a little problem with that. Except if you're contacting a person and he or she says they're willing to do this, that's okay. The person's going to get paid. And so you always have to wonder when a person is paid for this, how efficacious it is. Because a lot of times people can see through that and they know they're being paid. And so it's kind of difficult. Blogs and podcasting, we know that these are ways to reach people, and we find this being done more and more often. Mobile media, exactly what we've talked about, trying to reach people in a certain manner. And then finally, we have push, pull, and pick promotional strategies. Push is exactly what it says. They're doing everything they need to do to get the product out to the public. Notice here it says stocked on shelves, that's fine, but they want to get that out. Pull, on the other hand, relies heavily on advertising, and here you're trying to pull customers into stores to get them to ask for something. Now, one of the more effective types of pull strategy we have seen in recent years is the television advertisements that we see for prescription drugs. These are drugs that can only be gotten through a prescription written by your physician or another type of healthcare provider, nurse practitioner, or somebody, a physician's assistant, someone who is authorized to write a prescription. And so what the object of that is to have the patient go to his or her physician next time they go there and say, I'd like to get the XYZ because I have this chronic condition and it's going to help me. So that's a pull strategy. You're trying to pull customers in, and this way you're trying to get them to say something to request their products from retailers. But here you're requesting, what example I used, you're requesting the product from a person who is authorized to prescribe that. And finally, a pick economy. Here are customers that pick their products from online outlets. And that brings us to the end of chapter 16. We spent the last about 3 hours discussing this. I'm sorry for the video going down. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to put this up for tomorrow, and you'll go through this thing and unfortunately see my static picture up here. But you will be able to see the slides and my comments. Probably not the best in the world, but they will be there. So I thank you for your attention. Next week we will be back at 4:30 to discuss chapters 17 and 18, which will be getting into the accounting realm, financial and managerial accounting, and giving you some thought processes about that before we eventually move into the money part, chapter 17, understanding accounting and financial information, and then chapter 18, financial management. So I thank you for your attention tonight, and good night.